The 1949 New Year honours were appointments by many of the Commonwealth realms of King George VI to various orders and honours to reward and highlight good works by citizens of those countries. They were announced in supplements to the London Gazette of 31 December 1948 for the British Empire, New Zealand, India and Ceylon to celebrate the past year and mark the beginning of 1949. Recipients of honours are displayed here as they were styled before the new honours. British Empire, Baron John Jackson Adams, ESQ, BEJP, Director and General Manager, the West Cumberland Industrial Development Company. For political and public services, Major General Sir Winston Joseph Duggan, CMG, CBD, SO, Governor of Victoria since 1939. Sir John Boyd Dawes, D. SO, MCMD, D. SCL, D.F. RS, lately Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Privy Councillor the Right Honourable William Malcolm, Baron Haley, CSI, CMG, CIE, Chairman, Colonial Research Committee. For services to the Colonial Empire, Hilary Adair Marquand, ESQ, D. SCM, P. Member of Parliament for East Cardiff since 1945. Secretary for Overseas Trade, 1945 to 1947. Paymaster General, 1947 to July, 1948. Minister of Pensions, since July, 1948. Dr. Edith Summerskill, M. RCS.L., RCP, MP. Member of Parliament for West Fulham since 1938. Parliamentary Secretary, Ministry of Food, since 1945. Knight Bachelor Ernest Charles Adams, ESQ. C.B.E. Controller General, Export Credits Guarantee Department, Board of Trade. Bronson James Aubrey, ESQ. For services to the theatre, John Davidson Beasley, ESQ. M.A. Lit. D. D. Lit. F. B.A. Professor of Classical Archaeology, University of Oxford. Edward Clare Bligh, ESQ. Chief Officer of the Welfare Department, London County Council. Professor Henry Cohen, M.D., F. RCP, J.P., Professor of Medicine, University of Liverpool. Charles Sidney Folsham, ESQ, Chief Inspector of Taxes, Board of Inland Revenue. Archibald Joseph Gill, ESQ. M.IEE, Assistant Director General, General Post Office. William Allen Gillett, ESQ, President of the Law Society. Edmund Henry Gilpin, ESQ, Member, Export Guarantees Advisory Council, Board of Trade. Joseph Holland Goddard, ESQ, President, Machine Tool Trades Association. Harcourt Gilby Gold, ESQ. O.B.E. for services to rowing. Chairman of the Committee of the Henley Royal Regatta Stewards. Hugh Ernest Griffiths, ESQ, C.B.E. MSF, RCS for services in the industrial rehabilitation of disabled persons. Henry Louis Guy, ESQ, C.B.E. D. SCM, ICE, M. I. MEC, EF, RS, Chairman of the Mechanical Engineering Research Organization, Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, Secretary, Institution of Mechanical Engineers. John Hacking, ESQ, M. IEE for services to the electricity supply industry. John James William Handford, ESQ, CBO, BE, lately Assistant Under Secretary of State, Scottish Office. Frank Neville Harby, ESQ, C.B.E. Secretary, Exchequer and Audit Department. William Lawther, ESQ, J.P., President, National Union of Mine Workers. Andrew Hunter Arbuthnot Murray, ESQ, O.B.E. J.P., Lord Provost of Edinburgh. William Gamiog, ESQ, Ph.D., Director, Rothampstead Experimental Station. Anthony Frederick Ingham Pickford, ESQ, Town Clerk of the City of London, Raymond Edward Priestley, ESQ, MCD, SCL, D.D.L., Vice-Chancellor, University of Birmingham. Stanley Ford Rouse, ESQ, C.B.E., Secretary of the Football Association. Alan Arthur Saunders, ESQ, O.B.E., lately Coordinator of Building Supplies, Ministry of Health. John Lionel Simonson, ESQ, D. SCF, RICF, RS, Director of Research, Colonial Products Research Council. Donald McLean Skiffington, ESQ, C. B.E., J.P., Director, John Brown and Company, Limited, Clyde Bank. Professor Sidney Alfred Smith, C.B.E. M.D., F.R.C., P.E., Dean of the Faculty of Medicine and Regius Professor of Forensic Medicine, University of Edinburgh. William Ling Taylor, ESQ, C.B.E. F.R.I.C.S. Commissioner, lately Director General, Forestry Commission. James Turner, ESQ, President, National Farmers Union of England and Wales. John Hubert Worthington, ESQ, O.B.E.A., R.A.F.R.I.B.A. Architect. Thomas Eric Boswell Young, ESQ, M. Inst. MEM, ICE for services to the coal mining industry. Dominion's John Clifford Valentine Bean, ESQ, M.A.R.D., formerly Warden of Trinity College, University of Melbourne, State of Victoria. Donald George Bradman, ESQ, State of South Australia, in recognition of his services over many years as cricketer and captain of the Australian Test team and for public services in several directions. Walter Dwyer, ESQ, R.B., formerly President of the State of Western Australia Arbitration Court. Professor Bernard Thomas Ainsay, F.R.C.M. Ormond Professor of Music, University of Melbourne, State of Victoria. Errol Galbraith Knox, ESQ, M.B.E. for Public Services, State of Victoria. The Honourable Norman Martin, Agent General for the State of Victoria in London. Claude Plowman, ESQ, for Services to Engineering and Building, State of Tasmania. The Honourable Albert Joseph Walsh, K.C., Vice Chairman of the Commission of Government, Newfoundland. Colonies, Protectorates, etc. Cecil Furness Smith, ESQ, K.C., Colonial Legal Service, Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago. Leslie Ernest Vivian McCarthy, ESQ, lately Queen Judge in the Gold Coast. Sidney Bacon Palmer, ESQ, C.B.E. for Public Services in the Federation of Malaya. Sidney Phillipson, ESQ, C.M.G., Commissioner on Special Duty in Nigeria. Captain Frank O'Brien Wilson, C.M.G., D.S.O., Chairman of the Board of Agriculture, Kenya. Order of the Bath, Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the Bath Admiral Sir Harold Martin Burrow, K.C.B. K.B.E.D. S.O. General Sir William Duffy Morgan, K.C.B. D.S.O. M.C. Late Royal Regiment of Artillery. Sir Henry Thomas Tizard, K.C.B.A. F.C.F. R.S. Chairman, Defence Research Policy Committee, Ministry of Defence. Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath Vice Admiral George L.V. Creasy, C.B.C. B.E.D. S.O.M. V.O. Vice Admiral Reginald Henry Portal, C.B.D. S.C. Lieutenant General Gordon Holmes Alexander Macmillan, C. B.C. B.E.D. S.O.M.C. Late Infantry. General Sir James Stuart Steele, K.B.E. C.B.D. S.O.M.C. R.D. Late Infantry. Acting Air Marshal John Wakeling Baker, C.B.M.C.D. F.C. Royal Air Force. Acting Air Marshal Aubrey Beauclerk Elwood, C.B.D. S.C. Royal Air Force. Acting Air Marshal John Whitworth Jones, C.B.C. B.E. Royal Air Force. Commodore Colonel Paul Gottlieb Julius Getterbock, CBD, SOMCTD, JPDL, DC, Chairman, Territorial and Auxiliary Forces Association of the County of Gloucester. Sir Thomas Ingram Kynaston Lloyd, K. CMG, Permanent Under-Secretary of State, Colonial Office. Frederick William Metcalfe, ESQ, CB, Clerk of the House of Commons. Sir Henry Wilson Smith, K.B.E., Second Secretary, HM Treasury. Companion of the Order of the Bath Military Division Rear Admiral Stephen Harry Tolson Arliss, D.S.O. Rear Admiral Clifford Caslon, C.B.E. Rear Admiral Philip King Enright, C.B.E. Rear Admiral Geoffrey Allen Brooke Hawkins, M.V.O.D. S.C. Rear Admiral Henry William Urquhart McCall, D.S.O. Surgeon Rear Admiral Lionel Frederick Strugnall, M.B.B. S.M. RCS.L. R.C.P. Major General Vivian Davenport Thomas, C.B.E. Royal Marines. Rear Admiral Douglas Young Jameson. Major General and Chief Paymaster Cecil Norbury Bednall, O.B.E.M.C. Royal Army Pay Corps. Major General Geoffrey Kemp Bourne, C.B.E. Late Royal Regiment of Artillery. Major General Alexander Douglas Campbell, CBE, D.S.O. M.C.B.A. Late Corps and Royal Engineers. Major General Algernon Edward Cottam, C.B.E. M.C. Late Infantry. Major General Ernest Edward Down, C.B.E. Late Infantry. Major General Frederick Harris, C.B.E. M.C. M.B.K. H.S. Late Royal Army Medical Corps. Major General Gerard William Edgerton Heath, C.B.E. D.S.O. M.C. Late Royal Regiment of Artillery. Major General Frank St. David Benwell Lejeune, C.B.E. Late Royal Regiment of Artillery. Major General Francis Raymond Gage Matthews, D.S.O. Late Infantry. Major General Ewan Alfred Buesmiller, D.S.O. M.C.A. D.C. Late Infantry. Major General Hetman Jack Parham, C.B.E. D.S.O. A. D.C. Late Royal Regiment of Artillery. Major General Alfred Eric Robinson, D.S.O. Late Infantry. The Reverend John Arthur Jaggard, C.B.E. D.D. M.A.K. H.C. Royal Air Force. Acting Air Vice Marshal Philip Herbert Mackworth, C.B.E. D.F.C. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Eric Delano Barnes, A.F.C. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Christopher Neil Hope Bilney, C.B.E. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Gilbert Edward Nicolitz, A.F.C. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Adam Henry Robson, O.B.E. M.C.M. S.C. Ph.D. Royal Air Force. Air Commodore Harold Vivian Sutterly, C.B.E. D.F.C. Royal Air Force. Acting Air Commodore Arthur William Baines MacDonald, A.F.C. Royal Air Force. Civil Division Francis Sheed Anderson, ESQ, J.P. Under Secretary, Ministry of Food. Gilbert Tompkins Anstey, ESQ, Controller and Accountant General, General Post Office. Eric Strickland Burton Shaw, ESQ, C.B.E. Commissioner and Secretary, Board of Customs and Excise. Walter Carter, ESQ, C.B.E. Lately Principal Assistant Secretary, Ministry of Transport. George Phillips Coldstream, ESQ, Deputy Clerk of the Crown in Chancery, Lord Chancellor's Department. Bernard Henry Coode, ESQ, Principal Clerk, House of Commons. Cyril George Dennis, ESQ, MC, Under Secretary, Ministry of National Insurance. Brevet Colonel Ernest Edward Green, TD, D.L., Chairman, Territorial and Auxiliary Forces Association of the County of Glamorgan. Colonel North Victor Cecil Dalrymple Hamilton, C.V.O.D.L., Chairman, Territorial and Auxiliary Forces Association of the County of Ayr. Samuel Hoare, ESQ, Assistant Under Secretary of State, Home Office. Clifford George Jarrett, ESQ, C.B.E. Under Secretary, Admiralty. William Frank Jenkins, ESQ, C.B.E. Under Secretary, Ministry of Supply. David Lowe McIntyre, ESQ, VC Under Secretary, Ministry of Works. Wilfred John Nedden, ESQ, C.B.E. Under Secretary, Ministry of Labour and National Service. George North, ESQ, M.C.R.D. Registrar General. Gerald Hume Savoury Pinsent, ESQ, C.M.G. Controller General, National Debt Office. Edward Wilder Playfair, ESQ, Under Secretary, H.M. Treasury. John Cecil Glossop Pownall, ESQ, Chief Charity Commissioner. Colonel Granville Bryan Chetwynd Stapleton, O.B.E.T.D. J.P.D.L., lately Chairman, Territorial and Auxiliary Forces Association of the County of Surrey. Alfred Byers Valentine, ESQ, Under Secretary, Ministry of Town and Country Planning. Order of St. Michael and St. George, Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St. Michael and St. George the Right Honourable Wyndham Raymond, Viscount Portal, D.SOM, VO for services as President of the Olympic Games. Sir Ralph Clement Screen Stevenson, K.C.M.G. His Majesty's Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary at Nanking. Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George Morris Joseph Dean, ESQ, C.B. lately Deputy Under Secretary of State, Foreign Office. The Honourable Sir John Patrick Dwyer, Chief Justice, Supreme Court of the State of Western Australia. Cecil George Lewis Sires, ESQ, C.M.G. C.V.O. a Deputy Under Secretary of State in the Commonwealth Relations Office. Sir Gilbert McCall Rennie, C.M.G. M.C. Governor and Commander-in-Chief, Northern Rhodesia. Kenneth Owen Roberts Ray, ESQ, C.M.G. Legal Advisor to the Secretary of State for the Colonies. Edward Francis Twining, ESQ, C.M.G. M.B.E. Governor and Commander-in-Chief, North Borneo. Hubert Miles Gladwin Jebb, ESQ, C.B. C.M.G. United Kingdom Representative on the Brussels Treaty Permanent Commission and United Nations Advisor, Foreign Office. Frederick Robert Hoyer Miller, ESQ, C.M.G. C.V.O. Minister at His Majesty's Embassy in Washington. Alec Walter George Randall, ESQ, C.M.G. O.B.E. His Majesty's Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary at Copenhagen. Jeffrey Harrington Thompson, ESQ, C.M.G. His Majesty's Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary at Bangkok. Honorary Knight Commander H. Sultan Yusuf Izzuddin Shah Ibn al-Mahum Sultan Abdul Jalil O.B.E. Sultan of Perak Federation of Malaya. Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George Vincent Boyle, ESQ, M.R.C. V.S. Superintending Inspector, Animal Health Division, Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. John Deaton Griffith, ESQ, O.B.E. for services to the Olympic Games Organisation. Guy Erskine Hughes, ESQ, Chief, Food, Agriculture and Forestry Bipartite Control Office, Frankfurt, Control Commission for Germany. Brigadier Arthur Thomas Cornwall Jones, C.B.E. Senior Assistant Secretary to the Cabinet. Montague Travers Morgan, ESQ, MCMD, Medical Officer of Health, Port of London. Eric Roll, ESQ, Ph.D., Under Secretary, HM Treasury. Arthur Frederick Rouse, ESQ, Assistant Secretary, Ministry of Labour and National Service. Anthony Edward Welch, ESQ, Under Secretary, Board of Trade. Arthur Barton Pilgrim Ames, ESQ. L. R. C. P. L. R. C. S. Edden, F. R. S. Edden. Professor of Dental Science, University of Melbourne, State of Victoria. Colonel the Honourable Sir Ernest Lucas Guest, K.B.E.C. VO Minister of Defence and Air, Southern Rhodesia. John Arnold Sides, ESQ, Director of Education, State of Victoria. John McKellar Stewart, ESQ, M.A.D. Phil, formerly Vice-Chancellor, University of Adelaide, State of South Australia. Thomas Aitken Austin, ESQ, L, RLC, PL, RCS, Colonial Medical Service, Director of Medical Services, Uganda. William Lethbridge Gorrell Barnes, ESQ, Assistant Under Secretary of State, Colonial Office. Edward Barry, ESQ, OBE, Colonial Administrative Service, lately Chief Secretary, Somaliland Protectorate. Richard Brunel Hawes, ESQ, MBBSF, RCPM, RCS, Consulting Physician to the Colonial Office. Brigadier Martin Hochtine, C.B.E., Director of Colonial Surveys and Surveys Advisor to the Secretary of State for the Colonies. Seymour Argent Sanford Leslie, ESQ, Colonial Administrative Service, Financial Secretary, Tanganyika. William Alexander McNee, ESQ, OBE, Colonial Secretary, Leeward Islands. Captain Arthur Francis Newbold, Director of Recruitment, Colonial Office. Amberlal Bhai Patel, ESQ, for Public Services in Kenya. Geoffrey Martin Puckridge, ESQ, Colonial Administrative Service, Financial Secretary, Gold Coast. Commander James Grenville Pike Knott, Royal Navy, Colonial Administrative Service, Administrative Officer, Nigeria. Major Basil William Seeger, OBE, Colonial Administrative Service, British Agent, Western Aden Protectorate. Arthur Sleep, ESQ, Colonial Administrative Service, British Advisor, Johor, Federation of Malaya. James David Maxwell Smith, ESQ, Colonial Administrative Service, Financial Secretary, Singapore. Matthew Thomas Audsley, ESQ, Labour Advisor to His Majesty's Embassy and British Middle East Office, Cairo. Paul Henry Gorbooth, ESQ, Head of the European Recovery Department of the Foreign Office. Arthur Gateskill, ESQ, Sudan Manager, Sudan Plantations Syndicate Limited. Alfred John Gardner, ESQ, C.B.E., Head of the Establishment and Organisation Department of the Foreign Office. Geoffrey Wedgwood Harrison, ESQ, Minister at His Majesty's Embassy at Moscow. George Clinton Pelham, ESQ, until recently Councillor at His Majesty's Embassy at Baghdad. Darcy Patrick Riley, ESQ, OBE, Councillor at His Majesty's Embassy at Athens. Peter William Shelley York Scarlett, ESQ, Head of the Far Eastern Department of the Foreign Office. Richard Langford Speide, ESQ, until recently Councillor at His Majesty's Embassy at Cairo. Bertram Sidney Thomas, ESQ, OBE, Ph.D., D. Lit. D. Sc., lately Director of the Middle East Centre for Arab Studies, Shemlin. Charles Wodehouse Williams, ESQ, M.B.E., Director of Education, Sudan Government. Honorary Companion Haji Mohammed Sherif bin Osman, C.B.E., Mentri Besar Kadai, Federation of Malaya. Royal Victorian Chain the Most Reverend and Right Honourable Geoffrey Francis Fisher, D.D., Lord Archbishop of Canterbury. Royal Victorian Order, Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order Major General Sir Harold Auguste Wernher, B.T. K. CVOT, D. Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order Commander Ernest Dudley Collis, C. VOO, B.E. Royal Navy. Sir William Gilliatt, C. VOMD, MSF, RCPF, RCSF, RC, OG. Commander of the Royal Victorian Order Marion Kirk, Mrs. Butler, M.V.O., Member of the Royal Victorian Order. At this time the two lowest classes of the Royal Victorian Order were Member and Member, both with post-nominal letters M.V.O. Member was renamed Lieutenant from the 1985 New Year Honours onwards. 4th Class Major Edward William Spencer Ford, William Ware ESQ, FCIS, 5th Class Acting Flight Lieutenant Alan John Lee, Royal Air Force, Lieutenant Robert Thompson, Royal Navy, Flight Lieutenant Ernest Brian Trubshaw, Royal Air Force. Order of the British Empire, Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the British Empire Slow Wilson Jameson, K. CBMD, F. RCP, K. HP, Chief Medical Officer, Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire Matron-in-Chief Miss Gladys Taylor, C.B.E.R. R.C. Princess Mary's Royal Air Force Nursing Service. Miss Myra Curtis, C.B.E. Principal of Newnham College, Cambridge. Lately Chairman of the Committee on Children Deprived of a Normal Home Life. Miss Anne May Kerwin, C.B.E. National General Secretary, Young Women's Christian Association of Great Britain. Miss Alex Hester Marie Kilroy, Under Secretary, Board of Trade. Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire Engineer Rear Admiral Sidney Oswell through C.B. Vice Admiral Harold Richard George Kinahan, C.B.E. Lieutenant General Gerald Walter Robert Templar, C.B.C. M.G.D. S.O.O.B.E. Late Infantry. Lieutenant General Frederick George Risberg, C.B.C.B.E. Late Royal Regiment of Artillery. Air Vice Marshal John Whitford, C.B.C.B.E. Royal Air Force. Sir Michael Francis Joseph MacDonald, Chairman, English Division of the Appellate Tribunal for Conscientious Objectors. Donald Cyril Vincent Perrott, ESQ. Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Food. Bernard Kerr White, ESQ, Chief Registrar of Friendly Societies and Industrial Assurance Commissioner. Griffith Goodland Williams, ESQ, C.B. Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Education. Brigadier Iltard Nicol Clayton, C.B.E. Lately Political Advisor to the Head of the British Middle East Office, Cairo. Arthur Ronald Fraser, ESQ, C.M.G.M.B.E. Minister at His Majesty's Embassy in Paris. Brigadier Gerald Thomas Fisher, C.S.I.C.I.E. Lately British Military Governor of Somaliland Protectorate. Khan Bahadur Muhammad Abdul Qadir Makawi, O.B.E. for public service in Aden. Order of the Companions of Honour Lord David Gascoigne Cecil, writer, Goldsmith Professor of English Literature, University of Oxford. Arthur Deacon, ESQ, C.B.E. General Secretary, Transport and General Workers Union, New Zealand. Knight Bachelor the Honourable Robert Kennedy, Senior Queen Judge, Supreme Court of New Zealand. Order of St. Michael and St. George, Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George William George Baird, New Zealand Public Trustee. Reverend James John Reardon of Wellington, for services to the Maori people. Order of the British Empire, Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Arthur Telford Donnelly BL, Crown Solicitor, Christchurch. Commander of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Bernard Craycroft Aston, of Wellington, for services to agriculture and botany. Mrs. Emily Hancock McKinnon MBBCH, of Dunedin, for services in the field of medicine and welfare of women. Miss Mary Elizabeth Richmond, of Wellington, for services in education and welfare work. Officer of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Claude Wilfred Batten, of Wellington, for services to returned servicemen of both wars. Eric Hathaway Bridgman MBBCH Superintendent of Rotorua Hospital, Alfred Puatata Grace, of Lake Taupo, for services to Maori people in connection with education and development of native lands, Joseph Linklater, of Manawatu, for services in connection with the supervision of disabled servicemen's farms, Y. Happy Love, of Petone, Chairman of Taranaki Maori Trust Board, William Ross McCulley, Secretary of the Administration of Western Samoa, Victor Clement Peters, of Christchurch, founder and conductor of Christchurch Harmonic Society, Stanley Belton Pilcher, of San Francisco, for services in his capacity as honorary representative of the New Zealand government at San Francisco, Miss Margaret Mary Pride, of Dunedin, for services in connection with the Otago Early Settlers Association, William Henry Rice JP, of Auckland, President of the Auckland District Council for Horticulture and Vice President of the Dunedin Executive Council. Military Division, the Venerable Archdeacon Harold Mayo Harris Road Chaplain, Royal New Zealand Navy, Squadron Leader Hugh Gordon Wilson MM, Royal New Zealand Air Force, Wing Officer Francis Ida Kane, New Zealand Women's Auxiliary Air Force. Member of the Order of the British Empire Civil Division Miss Anne Buckley, of Christchurch, for services in connection with organisation and training of nurses, John Daniel Campbell JP, of Invercargill, Chairman of Southland Centre of the Red Cross Society, Mrs. Catherine Faulkner Cameron, of Dunedin, President of Dunedin National Council of Women, Miss Effie Julia Margaret Cardell JP, of Christchurch, for services in connection with the Society for the Protection of Women and Children, Frederick Carson, of Kaitangata, for services to the mining community in the Kaitangata district, Patrick Doyle, of Wellington, Chief Detective, for services with the police force, John Goodyear, of Motueka, for services to returned servicemen, John Henry Hall, of Gisborne, for services to local government, Miss Mary Hamilton Harrison, of Wellington, Secretary of the Lady Galway Guild, for patriotic and welfare activities, Edward Clark Isaacs, of Dunedin, for long services in many fields of sport, Miss Euphemia Ethel Law, of Wellington, formerly National President of the YWCA of New Zealand, Mrs. Ada McMahon JP, of Hastings, for services in connection with the settlement of returned servicemen, William Brinsley Nicholson, of Lower Hutt, for long services in local government and education, John Bar Patterson JP, of Auckland, Member of Auckland City Council, President of New Zealand Federation of Justices of the Peace. Military Division Instructor Lieutenant John Edward Holt, Royal Navy, Senior Commander Elsie Gray, New Zealand Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, Lieutenant and Quartermaster Richard John Healy, New Zealand Regular Force, Warrant Officer First Class Hugh Reginald Siegley, New Zealand Regiment, Flight Lieutenant Edgar William Galpari, Royal New Zealand Air Force, Flying Officer John William Prideaux Cook, Royal New Zealand Air Force, Warrant Officer Joseph Whitaker, Royal New Zealand Air Force. British Empire Medal Civil Division Leonard Charles March Taylor, Naval Base HMNZS Philomel. Military Division Chief Mechanician Joseph Kendall Croft, Royal New Zealand Navy, Master-at-Arms Charles Victor Harris, Royal New Zealand Navy, Chief Petty Officer William Harold Johnston, Royal New Zealand Navy, Sergeant Reginald Waltico, Royal New Zealand Artillery, Staff Sergeant Florence Eugene Donovan, New Zealand Regiment, Sergeant Charles Edward Gleeson, Royal New Zealand Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, Sergeant Bernard Richard Crean, Royal New Zealand Air Force, Sergeant Philip George Ibert, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Sergeant Annie Marshall Pettigrew, New Zealand Women's Auxiliary Air Force. Air Force Cross Squadron Leader George Robert Brabine, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Flight Lieutenant Robert Keith Walker, Royal New Zealand Air Force. King's Commendation for Valuable Service in the Air Colin James Fraser, Royal New Zealand Air Force. Robert Emery Weston, Royal New Zealand Air Force.